I said early on that it has a serious effect on political discourse. When the Official Language Act was passed, it immediately became sacred. It was bitterly opposed, but once it's passed, it's become sacrosanct, and it's impossible for any public figure really to criticise the Official Language Act in Canada. In the early 1970s, I was a columnist with the Financial Post in Canada, and a young man came to see me who was running for the Conservative leadership, the Progressive Conservative leadership, the equivalent to the Republican Party. And I asked him a question about the then fashionable issue of free trade between the US and Canada. Now, this was again a very old-fashioned issue. It was a hot issue, but it was fiercely opposed by the Canadian nationalists. This fellow immediately fell apart. He said, frankly, he didn't know anything about free trade, which is only the most important economic issue that faced Canada for its entire history. He said he didn't know anything about it because when he went into politics, he had to choose between learning French and learning economics. And he says, and I chose French. He was from Western Canada. And you know, to learn a language so you can function and debate in it as an adult is no mean task. It's very time consuming. So I'm not surprised he didn't have time for anything else. So anyway, I promptly lost interest in him. And he went on to be the leader, win the leadership, and become Prime Minister of Canada. His name was Joe Clark. But you know, I think that it did have a bad effect on that debate. Because, you know, at the time he said that to me, in the middle 1970s, none of you will remember this now, not even Bob. But, you know, socialism was really on the march then. Everybody thought that we were going to move to a permanent socialised society with permanent wage and price controls. Nixon introduced wage and price controls here. Trudeau had given a speech saying the free market system doesn't work, we have to have wage and price control. We really thought we were going to move all the way to a social democratic state. And nobody was opposing it, least of all, of course, Joe Clark. It just went along with the flow. It's hard to remember that now, because it's all been blown away by the great inflation of the early 1980s and so on, and by Ronald Reagan, God rest him. But in Canada, it was very slow to get that message, and one reason was because of the way in which their political debate is so messed up by this language stuff.